Catherine is an incredibly bizarre yet engaging puzzle/social simulator game where you get pulled into the life of Vincent Brooks, a 32-year-old man that has a series of strange events happen to him that you see unfold and help control the outcome of in between the puzzle sections of the game. The main gameplay loop consists of controlling Vincent up a series of block towers that require you as the player to push, pull, and attach blocks to one another in order to climb up higher and higher and reach the goal. Although this is technically a puzzle game, it plays out unlike any other traditional puzzle game you could probably think of. For one, you're actually controlling a character in a 3D space, rather than controlling the blocks itself like in Tetris or Luminous. You can pick up different power-ups you may find and use them later on when you get stuck on a certain section. You also collect coins, which can be used at a shop in between levels to bring one of these items into the level with you. There are many different types of blocks, and the game slowly introduces new types as the game goes on. Some of them have spikes inside that must be walked over quickly. Some break after stepping on them 2 or 3 times, certain ones are icy and slippery, and others could have springs in them, propelling you up to a higher block. Half of the gameplay is you climbing up these towers and trying to reach the goal on progressively tougher and tougher levels, but in between these levels you get to return to Vince's life and watch cutscenes of his everyday life play out. Every day after work, Vincent and his friends meet up at their favorite bar, Stray Sheep. There's Johnny, Toby, Orlando, and Erica the waitress. There's also the mysterious bartender and owner of the bar who simply goes by Boss. During this time you can chat it up with your friends, Boss, or anyone else that you see in the bar. You can answer text messages on your phone. You can view your trophies and best scores on the levels you've beaten so far. Play an arcade game that's basically a miniature version of the puzzles from the main game. And of course drink. Drinking alcohol gets Vincent more and more drunk. And the more drunk you get, the quicker you'll be able to move in your nightmares. When you go home for the night, Vincent goes to bed, and it's actually in his nightmares that we get to experience the heart-racing tower climbing gameplay. Vincent, along with a handful of other men currently finding themselves stagnant in their lives, unable to make a long-term commitment to their significant others, and making just enough income in their lives to get by, find themselves experiencing these recurring nightmares every night, where they must climb these block puzzles and reach the top in order to wake each morning. These guys are all cursed, and dying in their dreams makes them actually die in real life. You sometimes will come across these other victims while climbing in your dreams, but they all appear as sheep to you. There are news stories every night which you can watch on the bar television of more and more of these men suddenly dying in their sleep, and nobody can really explain what is happening. You'll see many of the other players of the block puzzles in between the floors to a level. This is where you can purchase items mentioned earlier and share strategies with the other sheep on how to properly climb the blocks when given different situations. There's this sheep with the green vest and glasses who is actually a regular at the bar and tells you how this curse seems to come around every 100 years, and that legend says there's a man who survives these incidents. When traveling to the next floor, you'll enter a confessional booth, and a strange voice will ask you different questions about love and relationships, and you get a choice between 2 options. An example may be whether or not you believe life begins or ends after marriage, and you get to see a percentage of what other people chose online. This game explores many themes of love and relationships, and makes you take a hard look at some of the many tough decisions one may need to make when it comes to these topics in their own life. Vincent has been dating a girl named Catherine for many years now, and has been unable to really seal the deal with her as far as marriage. Her mom has been asking when they plan on getting married, and Vincent is clearly feeling stressed as he feels they're comfortable where they are and doesn't really want things to change. He expresses his anxieties to his friends at the bar later that night, and Catherine starts texting you on your phone about how many of her friends are already married and having kids, and that it may be time for them to get out of their comfort zones too. Vincent's friends head home early for the night, and he stays there drinking alone for a bit longer. A little later, a blonde woman comes into the bar and sits down next to Vincent. This is where things really start to go south for Vincent. He drinks way more than he should, and she starts coming on to him hardcore, and is wearing some sort of lingerie. The thing is, Vincent doesn't really fight back, and she even purposely falls on him and kisses him. They end up hooking up that night, and after another nightmarish puzzle section, Vincent awakes shocked when finding the new Catherine next to him in bed. Yeah, her name is Catherine too, except hers is spelled with a C rather than your current girlfriend who spells it with a K. Anyway, Vincent can't seem to really remember what happened the night before and tells his friends all about it. It's at this point that I really start to dislike Vincent as a character, because it appears he's not really able to control himself very well around the new Catherine, and just how easily he seems to throw away years of a relationship with someone he claims to be in love with for one night with someone who he just randomly met. Catherine with a C starts texting you too each night, and how you choose to respond to her, if at all, will change the outcome of the story going forward. See, there are a total of 13 different endings across the original game and Catherine Full Body, the remake of the game, and making certain decisions or texting certain responses to people will change this morality meter in either direction. Obviously, pursuing Catherine with a K and responding to her positively will move the meter more towards the angel, and pursuing Catherine with a C will move the meter way more in the other direction. There are unique dialogue options you'll get to see depending on which Catherine you decide to pursue, and how you choose to respond and act towards the others will affect the outcome. Catherine with a C starts sending you dirty pictures and really coming on hard to Vincent. This, along with the increasingly difficult stages, makes me feel more and more stressed and anxious to try and fix what is unfolding right before my eyes. Not to mention in Catherine Full Body, the definitive edition I'm playing in this video, another potential love interest for Vincent is introduced in the form of Rin. Rin appears running from something in the opening cutscene this time around, and bumps into Vincent one day. After finding out she lost her memory, Vincent decides to help her by getting her a place to stay at the same apartment complex as him, and a job at the bar he spends so much time at. Rin plays piano at the bar, and you can interact with her, and her inclusion surely adds another layer of complexity to the story this time around, and gave me even more anxiety in my most recent playthrough for the new potential issues this could create for an unfaithful Vincent. You can pursue Rin similarly to how you would Catherine with a C, by talking with and texting her, and I suppose pursuing Rin and trying to get one of her endings would put you somewhere in the middle in terms of morality. I watched most of her interactions as well as her endings online, and while it's certainly another interesting avenue to go down when playing the game, I feel Rin's inclusion feels a little bit tacked on and unnecessary in Catherine Full Body, feeling more like an extra side objective rather than one of the main branching paths in the story. Around this point, Vincent will sometimes be chased by a monster on one of the floors of his dreams, representing one of his actual fears from the real world, one of which is this weird monstrosity found on the 3rd floor of level 3, the torture chamber. I guess this is meant to represent his desires in women and escaping his most recent temptations in Catherine with the C. You make it to the top of the tower and open these large doors, killing the monster. The next day, Catherine with a K tells Vincent that she thinks she may be pregnant, which just sends Vincent over the edge with stress. He starts sweating and freaking out, and she really gets frustrated with his response, or lack thereof. In the midst of this, Catherine with a C starts calling you to meet up, and he awkwardly answers and pretends to not know who she is and hangs up on her, only to have her show up at the exact restaurant Vincent and his girlfriend are at shortly after. Vincent somehow manages to get out of there just in time without either Catherines finding out about each other, and later that night we take on level 4, the Inquisition. Here you're chased by a giant baby, reflective of the most recent news from Catherine at the cafe, and the fear of taking responsibility. The baby can shoot electric bolts up the tower, and you must climb along these 2 split paths, pulling and pushing blocks to move between them and scale the tower from side to side. I enabled remix mode in this playthrough since I'm already pretty familiar with the original game, and this added in a bunch of extra blocks with gems in them that are connected together with the same colored ones nearby, mixing up the gameplay a little bit. Vincent awakes to find Catherine with a C there in bed with him again, and she tells you that you called her over last night for some more naughty time. Vincent is dumbfounded and can't seem to remember anything at all when it comes to her, and all of a sudden Catherine with a K comes knocking on his apartment door. Vincent somehow pulls a fast one and explains to her at the door that his boss is there and that he got really drunk last night and crashed at his place. Also that he's in his bathroom right now and she should leave due to the smell. She somehow buys this and leaves. Again, it's really hard to like Vincent as he just keeps barely getting caught, and as it seems, really isn't doing much to get Catherine with a C out of the picture. He just keeps freaking out whenever she shows up again, and as nonchalant and irresponsible as Vincent may be, we start to wonder if something other than just simple cheating is going on. You can of course choose to keep the new Catherine in the picture, and even end up being with her in the end if that's what you choose to do. But for me, it's always a pretty easy decision not to, especially given the circumstances. Catherine with the C's endings are pretty crazy, however, and I recommend multiple playthroughs of the game so you can see how they all play out. The strange voice you speak to at the end of each floor will sometimes show you old flashbacks of when Vincent and Catherine with a K first met, and how hard he tried to win her over back then, even competing with some of his friends who even liked her too. It really is a shame watching things change in his life like this, and despite the way things play out in the story of this game, I always try to fix his relationship with Catherine and try to get one of the good endings where you end up with her. For Catherine with a K, there is the true ending where you of course end up marrying her and living happily ever after with her. Then there's the good ending where things don't go exactly right, but there's still potential in the relationship, and then there's of course the bad ending, where she leaves you for good completely. Catherine with a C also has these 3 distinct endings, should you decide to pursue her, which makes for a total of 6 endings right there alone. Not to mention, in Catherine Full Body, they added a new version of each respective true ending, which makes for 8 across both games now. Then there's the 3 freedom endings, where Vincent doesn't end up with anyone and goes off to be an astronaut or something like that. Rin also has a good and a bad ending, and her story is absolutely wild, and equally as jarring and as wacky as Catherine with the C's. Another really tough level is the clock tower, where you must avoid losing your footing due to the abundance of blocks that crack and break away, as well as all these slow to move solid stone blocks. You can redo with the R1 button, and this is pretty helpful, as I'll frequently mess up and need to go back one to correct myself. You really have to remember some of these tips and tricks you and the other sheep share, as you'll really need all your wits with you if you're going to survive this game. There's a policeman, this guy with sunglasses, and then this guy with a striped tie named Archie that you all meet at the Stray Sheep. They all seem to be cheating on their significant others too, and seem to be in similar predicaments, even though they don't realize it yet. You see them several times in between levels, and it's always upsetting to see less and less sheep show up as you ascend higher and higher to each floor, knowing less and less people are surviving the challenges each night, and that you can potentially be next. Vincent hears a loud screech next door, and finds Rin passed out in her room. Her towel falls off, and Vincent sees that Rin is actually a dude. Yeah, this gets super weird as Vincent freaks out even more, as I guess he was developing some sort of feelings for her up to this point before he knew that. Either way, Rin runs off after Vincent slaps his hand away in shock, and he goes after him to try and apologize. Vincent apologizes, and Rin confesses his love for you, but knows how that probably isn't something you're looking for given the circumstances. And I guess if you've been pursuing Rin more up to this point, you can continue to do that despite everything you've discovered about him so far. But I was glad in my playthrough when Vincent explained to Johnny and Orlando the next day that Rin is simply a good friend and he doesn't feel the same way. Vincent starts getting calls from someone claiming to be Catherine with the C's boyfriend, named Steve, that is clearly angry with the fact that she's sleeping around with other men, and he threatens to kill you if you don't break things off with her. Vincent starts getting super paranoid for his safety, and we later find out that Steve too is cheating on his wife, and even divorcing her due to how wrapped up with Catherine he's become. What's weird is how another girl named Catherine suddenly came into another man's life, just like one did in Vincent's, but after describing what she looks like to him over the phone, she's described looking nothing like Vincent's Catherine. That night, we take on Stage 7, the spiral corridor, and in between floors we see a tie-wearing sheep meant to be Steve, a sheep with a red fedora meant to be your pal Orlando, and a sheep with a cigarette and brown coat meant to be Johnny. Yeah, both of Vincent's pals are also cursed, and it's really a shame none of them can really remember their nightmares when they awake. We even see the sheep with glasses and green vest one last time, and we teach him a technique this time called the marching spider, where you can line out blocks to create a path for yourself when you hang and shimmy across. On the 3rd and final floor of the spiral corridor, we're greeted by the shadow of Vincent. This is a creepy anti-Vincent shadow with a mask that can make the whole stage go black at some of the most crucial moments when you're trying to climb. This level is pretty challenging due to how it really puts your ability to move blocks in a 3D space to the test, as it requires pushing and pulling blocks in all 4 directions, working around many solid stone blocks that don't move at all, and avoiding these black hole boxes that'll suck up all blocks above it and instantly kill you if you accidentally step over it. At the top of the tower, we see Steve climbing up behind you. Steve and Vincent actually recognize each other due to their voices, and Steve explains to you that you're both cursed and that this is all revenge for their betrayal. Just then, the shadow form of Vincent climbs up, and his mask cracks and shatters away, revealing his demonic face and eating Steve right in front of you. Traumatized, Vincent escapes and wakes up the next morning and goes out to get sushi with Orlando, and both of them are clearly exhausted, just experiencing similar nightmares only hours earlier. They hear about a man named Steve who was killed last night on TV, and Vincent is able to remember how he saw him in his dream last night, and explains to Orlando how people caught in this curse are being punished for their betrayal to their significant other. However, Orlando says that he was the one betrayed in his relationship. We get small little glimpses into Orlando's previous marriage, and I guess for him, he was the one that was actually cheated on. Vincent finally breaks things off with Catherine with a C, and she's really pleased to remain being his girl, despite the fact that he already has a girlfriend with who he says he's now going to marry due to the fact that she's pregnant with his child. This kind of comes as a shock to both us and Catherine, as Vincent was so hesitant in the first place when it came to marriage, but I suppose it's through all these trials and tribulations so far, and almost losing her multiple times, that Vincent finally seems confident in his true feelings for Catherine with a K. Catherine still wants to be with you despite everything, and she says she doesn't mind. If you haven't realized by now, Catherine with a C is fucking crazy, and she beats the shit out of Vincent in the bathroom after he puts his foot down and tells her it's over. Catherine leaves, and Vincent finally gets a good night's sleep that night, now that he believes it's finally over and actually doesn't experience a nightmare for the first time in a week. In the morning, your girlfriend Catherine knocks on the door and Vincent answers it, only to have Catherine with a C show up behind him in his apartment just out of nowhere. Catherine invites her inside, and it's super awkward, and Catherine with a K is obviously very angry that Vincent is seeing another woman, even knowing she's pregnant with his child. Catherine provokes Catherine, and they start arguing as Vincent just sits there looking guilty as hell and starts freaking out screaming. Feeling Vincent is being manipulated, Catherine reaches for a knife in the sink, and the new Catherine pulls it out from behind her, saying,
"What's the matter? Looking for this?"
Vincent jumps in front of Catherine and ends up getting stabbed pretty bad. Catherine with a K ends up killing Catherine with a C in the confrontation, and you both run out the door only to find yourselves in the final stage, the cathedral. This is pretty crazy, as it seems the real world and Vincent's nightmarish worlds are colliding, and you and Catherine must now ascend this massive tower together, with many horizontal blocks stacked together, while escaping a giant demon form of Catherine with a C. This feels like a truly epic, engaging, and worthwhile stage, as you must avoid these electric blasts and wait for Catherine with a K, as she is a much slower climber, so you must make sure your previous block paths remains intact so she can follow you from behind. You finally complete the level, and at the top, Catherine ends up falling backwards, and Vincent jumps after her and grabs her, saying she needs to simply believe in him. She begins to ask you a question when the level suddenly ends, and you awake in your bedroom on the 8th day again. Your girlfriend Catherine is there waiting for you to wake up, and Vincent is super confused being back in the real world again, and explains that this all happened before, except that the other Catherine was there. This is actually the first time Catherine is hearing about the other Catherine, and she actually came there to break up with Vincent. Catherine admits that she found out her pregnancy was a false alarm, but she didn't tell Vincent sooner despite her knowing, because she felt that he would leave her. She's been having her suspicions as of late that something was up, and Vincent just confirms it right there in the moment, saying that there was another girl, but that it's okay because it's all over now. Catherine is just so done with Vincent at this point and breaks up with him and leaves. We kinda start to feel bad for Vincent as he's just so confused of what's happening, and although it shouldn't have had to get to this point for Vincent to finally realize what he truly wants in his life, we still kinda don't want him to end up alone like this after all our efforts. Vincent explains to Orlando that Catherine with a K is gone from his life, but that there's absolutely no trace of Catherine with a C on his phone at all from the past week. Orlando, as well as his other friends, all go on to say that none of them even saw him break up with anyone last night, and that he was just sitting there by himself at one of the tables as stray sheep all night. Vincent starts becoming really frantic and desperate for answers at this point, and kinda reminds me of how that guy Steve was acting on the phone earlier in the game. He heads to Stray Sheep for answers as he figures Erica, the waitress, would surely remember seeing her last night. She says nobody with Catherine's description ever came in, which pretty much seals it. Vincent allegedly was talking to someone only he could see all this time. He thinks really hard about the first time he saw her that night, and remembers the waiter at the bar actually saying something to her as she came into the bar before she sat down with Vincent. He heads over to talk to Boss, the bartender, and after shouting at him and shaking him around by the collar a bunch, finally gets him to admit that he did indeed see the girl come in that day, and even again last night, and sit with Vincent. There's somewhat of a sigh of relief as it makes Vincent, and by extension us as the players, realize he's not completely crazy, and Catherine with a C did indeed exist. Here's where things start unraveling and all coming together. Vincent starts realizing Boss is somehow involved in all this when he says he's surprised he survived this long. He rips off his shades out of frustration for answers, and he has these weird satanic red eyes underneath. Boss explains that he is an ancient being that goes by Thomas Mutton now, and that, quote,
"Wasting a woman's time of greatest fertility is a hindrance to the future of the species. So we separate these non-fruitful couples and redistribute the women to men who can follow the natural order, you see?"
So what I've gathered is what he does is separate couples that haven't committed to anything permanent yet, and basically kill the men and let the women think that they were cheated on by the men, so that they go on to marry and have kids with someone else, rather than to stay in a dead-end relationship where that isn't happening. It's really weird and not explained very well, but he explains that Catherine with a C is a succubus, a creature that appears as a man's ideal woman to the men that he curses. This means that Catherine was appearing as different women to many of the other sheep, and this explains everything that happened with Steve, trying to pursue his own Catherine and ultimately ended up losing everything in the end. Naturally, Vincent gets really upset with Mutton and says it's all his fault everything went astray with his girlfriend Catherine, and that he got his wish because he was finally ready to marry her. But Mutton says that's only because he cheated on her and felt bad. But then Vincent says Catherine wasn't even real in this world, so is it really cheating? To which Mutton replies,
If it feels like cheating, then it's cheating, right?
the real Catherine finally had enough of Vincent's non-committal attitude and fear of change, and of course, the cheating was the final straw. Thomas Mutton feels no remorse and tells Vincent if he pushes him, he can kill him off in his dreams tonight, making him face the ultimate challenge that will surely destroy him. But Vincent threatens to kill Boss right then and there instead. Just as this happens, Orlando, Johnny, and Toby come back to drink more, since they were worried about you. Vincent decides to let Boss go for now, but in exchange promise that he stops the nightmares once and for all for everyone that's cursed by him. Confident in the brutal difficulty of his final challenge, Boss agrees to these terms. Boss disappears, and you get to enjoy one final night at the bar with your friends before it all goes down for the last time in his dreams. When going to bed, Vincent faces the final stage, the Imperio. This consists of 6 final floors to take on. The first is not too bad, but has you scaling up blocks along these 3 split paths with these monster blocks that lick you if you hang on them, causing you to fall, and a bunch of these mystery blocks that can be any other type of block that are revealed when walking over them. The second has more of the monster blocks that can move on their own now. The third has some ice blocks, but is pretty easy overall. The fourth is more of a sprint, trying to scale a more simple block puzzle quickly before the ground gives out, with a bunch of these black hole blocks forming a sort of maze at the end of it. On the 5th stage, Mutton appears again as the stage boss, and has a gun that can shoot you if you're not quick enough to get out of the way. And he can also change many of the blocks all at once. This is a super tough, but extremely fun and engaging floor that requires all of your techniques learned up to this point, as well as the final trial on the 6th floor. Here we're followed by Dumuzid, Mutton's true form, which is this disembodied head made up of fallen sheep, and you must scale a giant wall with a ton of multiple layers and a lot of unmoving blocks, meaning you'll have to work around them. And Dumuzid can curse you, causing any blocks pulled towards you to turn into a different one. Vincent finally reaches the peak of the tower and tells Dumuzid people are free to live their lives however they want and can't be herded around like sheep, and opens the door, defeating Dumuzid once and for all. I never expected a full-blown story with my puzzle game, let alone one this filled with personality, style, drama, and action. Catherine pulled me in back in 2012 with its unique, frantic puzzle-solving gameplay, but kept me sticking around despite its brutal challenge because I was just so invested in the story that I wanted to get better at the puzzles just to see what happened next. Catherine surely never lets up as far as keeping the game engaging, challenging, frantic, and genuinely unique with its suspenseful narrative where your every move affects the story and final outcome of the game. I ended up getting the good ending with Catherine with a K this time, where after defeating Dumuzid, Vincent ends up getting her to meet with you one last time at Stray Sheep so he can apologize and explain everything that happened with Catherine with a C, ending with her saying she'll consider maybe getting back with Vincent, and Vincent is clearly very happy as there's still hope for them after all. Catherine has an overwhelming sense of style between its UI and other text and graphics that appear on screen, and combined with its imaginative story and incredible soundtrack, Catherine has proven itself to be one of the most bizarre yet engaging stories I've ever experienced to date. Playing through Catherine feels like a super intense thrill ride that makes you feel a little bit anxious in the best way possible. So much happens in Vincent's life in just 1 week that quickly makes it start spiraling out of control, causing you as the player to feel an increasing level of anxiety and anticipation for the next big block puzzle and plot development to unfold. Catherine Full Body on the PS4 is probably the best way to experience this game, allowing for more plot developments and extra paths to take in order to see different dialogues, endings, and even extra levels for you to take on after the Imperio, should you decide to pursue the new love interest Rin. Catherine Full Body also provides plenty of extra content, including a challenge mode, multiplayer modes, and online arenas. This, combined with the many different endings and remix mode, gives any player plenty of content to keep the block puzzle action gameplay going throughout the years. All this to say that Catherine is genuinely one of the most bizarre yet engaging games I've ever played, with its unique gameplay hook and heart-racing storylines. This game ages like fine wine, as each new playthrough has me discovering more and more little details I may have missed the last time through, and the stress, anxiety, and genuine panic Vincent feels on a daily basis with everything going on definitely rubs off on you as a player and succeeds in making you feel the anxiety of being put in the shoes of an unfaithful man cheating on his girlfriend. Catherine's story, combined with its one-of-a-kind gameplay with the closest game I could really compare it to being Pushmo on the 3DS, helps her climb to the top when it comes to obscure yet genuinely enticing games. There is nothing quite like this game, and playing it makes you definitely think a lot about relationships, marriage, and even life after death. It's a complicated game with a lot of moving parts, but it means each playthrough will be unique depending on your decisions, and it's really the story that drives this game along for me. Catherine Full Body is a hard game to master, let alone even beat on your first time through, but it's enticing yet crazy story and wanting to see Vincent succeed despite all his shortcomings that helps push us through its tough challenge. This game really put the developer's Atlas on my radar, as I truly admired the art, music, and the more adult themes that helped Catherine stand out originally back in 2012 for me. Playing through Catherine again recently reaffirmed me how much I love this game with its bizarre world and story, and I'll surely be revisiting it again in the future.
Top of the morning, kiddo.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and bell notification icons so you can stay up to date on all my future videos.